Hello everybody, I'm George from Ireland. In this video I'm going to be asking whether Putin's regime is under threat at home. I mean, could it be overthrown? Because one of my loyal viewers asked me to address this topic and I was going to come to it anyway, but here we are. The short answer is not really. The likelihood he's going to be overthrown is very low. There's a low chance. For various reasons. So yes, this conflict is going badly. I mean, the Russian forces are still making headway. They supposedly had their fourth general killed. They haven't acknowledged this, but they haven't denied it either, which I think that is affirmative silence. So the Ukrainians obviously intercepted their communications, are going particularly out to kill Russian generals. They're thought to be 20 Russian generals in Ukraine, 4 of them have been killed already. Here we are on the 22nd day of the invasion. Kharkiv is only 20 miles from the Russian frontier, and the Russians still haven't even taken that city. So they're not even going a mile a day, you could say. And all right, I know it takes longer to take cities, but I do think they're going to win in some sense because they're just grinding these cities down. It's not glamorous. If killing people can ever be glamorous, it's not glorious. Just gradually knocking down every single building, waiting until they run out of food, water, and everything else. So there's significant hardship for the Russian economy. It's hundreds of billions of dollars been wiped off already, and their Aeroflot's not going to get the transponders they need. They can't fly over the airspace of EU countries or North America. That's going to wreck their airlines. Various things they can't buy. Now, that doesn't hit the average Russian, but the elite are no more shopping trips to Paris. And some of the people on the sanctions list, they can't be owning villas in Spain or sailing their super yachts off the coast of Italy. And a lot of high-end firms are not going to sell stuff. Obviously, the ordinary person couldn't afford that anyway. But there's going to be a general economic downturn. Now, Russia just managed to service its debt this month. But will they default next month? We'll see. And there's extreme censorship. There's a rumor that martial law is going to come in. The border might be closed. So liberal-minded Russians have gone, but they haven't been aggressively questioned by the FSB, Internal Security Service, when they're leaving. And there's been an anti-war concert in Istanbul, Turkey. Oxymiron, this rapper, held a concert. Only 400 people were able to attend, but it was live streamed as well. Raised $30,000 for Ukrainian refugees. So he's openly denouncing the war, and indeed he's using the word war. He said, obviously, because of the censorious regime in Russia, he could go to jail for that. At least 15,000 people have been arrested for anti-war demonstrations in Russia. There was that valiant journalist who held up the no war sign live on Channel 1's broadcast. She got off with a $280 fine. I suppose because she's so famous, they gave her a slap on the wrist, but they might find that that's not working and they might start to be more punitive. But Putin has effectively coup-proofed his regime by a number of methods, partly by surrounding himself with such mediocrities that these people have no following and there's no obvious person to take over in a musical chairs coup d'etat. It's a polycratic regime. He's got several intelligence agencies with overlapping areas of responsibility. There are turf wars between them. There's tension also in the armed forces, which is why all armed cooperation is so poor, which is why they're underperforming in the war, because artillery, armor, infantry, the Air Force, they don't gel together. They don't really coordinate, which is one of the reasons it's going slowly. So in some extent he wants it that way, but the price you pay is they're not a very effective fighting force. And actually it's often the army overthrows the president. So there are not many army units near the center of Moscow. And he's got his own praetorians, as it were. And yeah, so he's surrounded himself with all these second-raters who make himself seem impressive by comparison. And they owe their promotion not to their own brilliancy, but simply due to his patronage. He's had a bit of the cult of the personality, so I think it would be very difficult to overthrow him. If you're a general who wanted to plot against him, you have to open up to someone, you have to take someone to the circle of trust. This person could inform on you. It's very risky. His eyes and ears are everywhere. National security is a fixation. We say that was really security of his regime because he's been very happy to kill his own civilians by the thousand throughout his regime. The security of Russia he defines as the insecurity of her neighbors. They must be all vulnerable to her, like trying to leave Ukraine militarily denuded, trying to emasculate other countries so that he can terrorize them whenever he wants. So I don't think there's a high chance he's going to be overthrown. And yes, sanctions are going to hurt. Salaries might be cut, taxes might go up. There's going to be retrenchment in all sorts of public service spending. But the one he's obviously going to prioritize the military, and other regimes have survived much harsher sanctions for much longer, like North Korea. Admittedly, North Koreans were always poor. But most Russians, for the last 20 years, they grew accustomed to a decent standard of living, and that's gone. So even if a peace deal is reached with Ukraine, I don't think that the West is going to completely ease off these sanctions. It's still going to try and turn away from Russian oil and gas, partly for its own energy security, so Russia can't switch it off in future, partly because European Union countries are minded to do anyway for environmental reasons. But I don't think there's much chance of him being overthrown. The FSB has its eyes and ears everywhere, and dissent is stamped on hard. And now that they've been kicked out of the Council of Europe, Medvedev, the former Prime Minister and President, said, well, this is a golden opportunity to restore the death penalty, which they might do. And so, 15,000 arrested for protesting. But you'd need several million to do so. There's some sort of study said you need at least 3% of the population actively involved in protest before the person can be overthrown. And always the protests need to be strategically concentrated. They need to be in the capital city. If they're in deep Siberia, well, nobody cares. So I think he's going to hang on. I think the Grim Reaper is more of a menace to him. As I say, I think he may well die in the next couple of years, and if not die, his infirmity will be such that he's obliged to tender his resignation. He likes some sort of retirement job, as in, leader of the nation, as Nazarbayev had, but that didn't work for him, which Putin has noticed, or some sort of ruler of the Union state with Belarus. But we shall see. So I don't think there are any rumblings from within the system there's going to be a coup. Of course, there was an attempted putsch in 1991 by Stalinists to stop Gorbachev's reformist agenda, and that failed through to huge demonstrations on the streets of Moscow, vacillating by the Koustas, who weren't willing to use huge-scale force right at the beginning. Only 3 people were killed in that. Had they been willing to kill 300 immediately, the first sign of dissent, maybe they would have prevailed. They weren't smart with their media messaging and things like that. They didn't kill Gorbachev. They weren't willing to be ruthless enough. And Putin will do anything it takes, no matter how ruthless, no matter how many thousands of unarmed people he needed to kill to stay in power. Look at Assad. He's spoken up for him. He calls protesters rioters, if not terrorists. So he would do anything to cling on to power. So, and he's an example of this paradigm, the ring of Giges. I hope I pronounced it correctly, that Plato writes about his Republic, Book 2, saying, imagine you could put on this ring and make yourself invisible. If you had illimited power, would you be tempted to abuse that power? Well, you probably would, which is why no ruler can have unchecked power. And Putin wields untrammeled power, which is a very perilous thing. Even if a ruler isn't wicked, he just might become unwise, make a huge mistake. So sadly, I think he's going to hang on. I don't see him being forced out, even if this military campaign goes really badly. If there was an attempted insurrection, I hope he might withdraw forces from Ukraine to deal with that. Right, that's enough. Toodaloo.